He's failed to pull the Republican Party together. The reason we can't come to an agreement is because there's an infighting within the Republican Party.
Our only pathway to recovery is to have a leader like Joe Biden who has actually done this job before. I believe that Joe Biden's going to pick the right partner for himself because he's the only person who's done this job.
Being a partner with somebody who I have deep respect for, with somebody who I believe is authentic, is genuine, has the capacity to have empathy, has tremendous experience, being considered is a tremendous honor. But all of that is the reason why I would want to go forward with this.
3 women on Joe Biden's short list for vice president made the rounds this morning on the Sunday shows. And here to talk about it and more, Midwin Charles, a civil trial and criminal defense attorney, Kimberly Atkins, Boston Globe senior opinion writer and MSNBC contributor, and Elise Jordan, also an MSNBC contributor, but she's also a political analyst, MSNBC political analyst. Thank you all for being here. Well, we just saw 3 of the people who are considered by Joe Biden to be his vice presidential running mate. There's been a lot of talk of literally lately, within the last few days, about the potential of a black woman being chosen to be Biden's number 2. I'm going to start with you, Kimberly. What happens if Joe Biden doesn't select an African-American woman specifically, but a woman of color to be his running mate?
Yes, I think what the running mate, the importance of the running mate at this point, and we're talking about in the campaign, and we can talk separately about what it means to actually be in the position in governing. But right now, what Joe Biden is looking for is someone who voters can get excited about. One thing about this pandemic is that it's completely flattened the ability to get out and connect with voters in a way. Now, Joe Biden has largely benefited from that because the election has become a referendum on the president, and that has boosted Biden's numbers. But what he really needs to do is encourage people to vote, especially at a time where the president is claiming that the vote will be fraudulent. You have to ensure that more people are out to vote. People don't distrust the system, and people are excited about this, and a running mate can certainly do that. I think any of these women who you profiled, as well as others on the list, including Kamala Harris and even Elizabeth Warren, can be people who can energize the base. The more well-known they are, that might be a help. But certainly, Biden has to also be thinking about who he wants working by his side on the job, who he trusts, whose ear he has when it comes to policy decisions, and who has been guiding him. So it's a lot going on in this decision-making process. The election is just one little piece of it. But it seems that I think all of these women, if Joe Biden wins, will be seen again as part of his administration in one way or another.
Well, Midwin, picking up on something that Kimberly just said about, can folks get excited about the running mate? My question to you is, can folks get excited about a Gretchen Whitmer, Governor Whitmer of Michigan, or even a Senator Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts, both being white women, not women of color?
Well, I watched Stacey Abrams' interview this morning on CNN, and I think she made what I think is an excellent point that a lot of people tend to overlook, is that Joe Biden was vice president for the United States of America for 8 years. So he understands the job. He knows exactly what he's looking for. Should he pick any woman, I think you could get a lot of excitement out of the base. But I think it's very important for him to recognize who is the base of the Democratic Party. Who comes out and votes consistently? Who comes out and is able to save elections that are literally in the clutch? When we talk about Doug Jones versus Roy Moore, it was black women that took Doug Jones to the finish line. When we talk about the vote in 2016, 94% of black women voted for Hillary Clinton, and not that many white women in comparison voted for Hillary Clinton. And when you look at even when, for example, Elizabeth Warren was running during the primary, she was not doing that well. So I think that it would be a slap in the face for Joe Biden to not pick a black woman, only because black women have demonstrated they are qualified, they are competent, they are skilled, but they have also demonstrated that they can lead in the Democratic Party. And much like in the Republican Party, where you saw Donald Trump court evangelicals and try to make sure that he would do that by picking Pence as his VP, he did that because he understood that evangelicals are the base of the Republican Party. They are the ones that are going to come out. They are the ones that are going to make sure that they vote, and they vote en masse, right, in large groups. And so that's one of the things that I think Joe Biden has to do. And remember, we're talking about millions of people who are eligible to vote that did not vote in 2016. That's who we want to excite. So not necessarily your primary voter, who are people who come out all the time, but you also need to make sure that you get people to come out to vote who have never voted before, who have never registered to vote before. That's really how you get that win.
Elise, I'm going to ask you the same question, but coming from the center right, you are a Republican. You're still a Republican, right?
No,
you left the party.
That went out I was, yes, but I left the party.
Okay, but you still come at things from a center right point of view. And from your perspective, who is the vice presidential candidate who would give the Trump-Pence ticket, assuming it still is the Trump-Pence ticket, a run for its money in November, from your perspective?
I really have been overwhelmed by the depth of this pool of women. I think there are so many fantastic women who can add such different redeeming characteristics to the ticket that I hesitate to go all in for one. I think that Congresswoman Val Demings from Florida, that she could potentially be an advantage with center-right voters because of her law enforcement background. And frankly, it might help in Florida. We know that there's very little advantage, really, in who you pick for your VP candidate, except perhaps in the home state advantage. So at this stage, I wonder what the personal ties are and how that Veep stakes is going personally with Joe Biden, because his decision really is going to come down to who he has that personal connection with, who he's going to be able to get into the trenches on the campaign trail for the remaining 3 months to defeat Donald Trump. And with such a wealth of women who offer so much experience at the state level and at the congressional level, and you've got someone like that former National Security Advisor Susan Rice, who Vice President Biden had a strong working relationship with in the Obama White House, I really think that it's going to be hard for him to go wrong with this selection.
And I just want to just reiterate something I said yesterday on the show, that being an African-American woman and being qualified for the position are not mutually exclusive. And as we have seen with this roster of women of color, but all of the women being considered to be Joe Biden's vice presidential nominee, they are all qualified to be on that ticket. So I just want to just stamp that again. I want to play something that Congressman Jim Clyburn said on the CNN show this morning, and we'll talk about it on the other side.
I don't think he plans to leave the White House. He doesn't plan to have fair and unfettered elections. I believe that he plans to install himself in some kind of emergency way to continue to hold on to office.
That is a rather apocalyptic vision of what the future holds. Yesterday, when I had Rosa Brooks and former RNC Chairman Michael Steele on talking about a wargaming exercise that they took part in, the conclusion was, Donald Trump is going to, if he loses election, he will leave. He won't go to the inauguration. He'll sulk out of town and say, I didn't want the job anyway. But Congressman Clyburn is taking the complete opposite view. Midwin, do you share as pessimistic a view as Congressman Clyburn?
Well, I don't know if I'd call it pessimistic. I think I would call it just paying attention to what it is that Donald Trump says over and over and over again. Remember, when Michael Cohen gave his congressional testimony a while ago, he said these exact same things. He said that he believed if Donald Trump did not win the election, that he would not leave the White House willingly. So this isn't new. And Donald Trump always, if you just look at his Twitter feed, even if you try to ignore it, it pops up everywhere. He says all the time, he tries to undermine the election in November. You see what he's doing with the post office by trying to undermine the post office so that people can't vote by mail. I think he tweeted or retweeted this morning 51 times about how mailing, voting by mail is fraudulent and certain states need to be investigated, despite the fact that he himself has voted by mail and so many other people who are in this current administration have voted by mail. So he always seeks to undermine the election. And the purpose of doing so is to make sure that people question the results and that perhaps he doesn't leave. But he constantly shows us who he is. It's time America started believing him. In my opinion, I think we need to get ready and we need to expect the worst from Donald Trump. He tells us this over and over again, and many of his supporters will follow his lead. And you see it with respect to people freaking out about having to wear masks. Just about anything that he says, he has such a devout following and such a devout number of Americans that will follow just about anything he says to do. I think that should be incredibly disconcerting for us as Americans, and we need to get ready and expect it. And I think Representative Clybourne's premonition here is accurate.
Kimberly and Elise, we've got less than a minute left, but do you share Midwin's point of view? Or do you share Congressman Clybourne's pessimism? Kimberly.
Well, I think at the very least, it's a big signal that the president's tweet attacking democracy, frankly, with his votes trying to cast doubt on the election, is a signal to lawmakers in the state and federal level that they should move to shore up the elections, protect the post office. Congress should include money to help states and localities carry out extended absentee voting. This is a call to protect the election system because the president is signaling an attack on it.
Elise?
I share the pessimism, and I think that every American who cares about preserving democracy in this country should be calling on their local leaders, their state leaders, to shore up election security, to do everything to be prepared so that we can have as smooth of an election as possible, because it's just been really disgusting to see how the Trump administration has been putting no effort into the complications that are posed for this election by the pandemic.
Midwin, Elise, and Kimberly will be back. The panel will be right back. But before we go to a break, a programming note. Tonight at 8